Well, I want them to know, the first thing I say is 90% of the things you do don't work. Right? I mean, let's say a student is high achieving from undergrad,
Yes.
right? They need to understand failure really quickly and learn from it. Like at the end of the day, research is more about failure than success, right? So I really want them to know that they're going to fail more often, and that's okay.
Okay.
Right? Because it's not about why that it didn't work, it's why didn't it work. So there's still a lesson to be learned here, right? It was a failure, but why? And that's, as long as they're willing to do that. But I also want them to know, because that is, especially in, let's say I was in a kitchen and I was creating new recipes of food, maybe some crazy fusion from different parts of the world. Some of that food is going to taste horrible, right? But you're still going to have to eat it. and so it's that same analogy that when you're in the lab, you're going to spend an enormous amount of time with things and it's just not going to work out. And you're just going to have to own that and learn from it and grow. But undergrads, our entire education system is kind of flawed up until grad school, in my opinion, because it's just like about rewarding people who get an A so that you can put that thing on the fridge, right? It starts very early. It's about your parents being proud of you because you reached a title, but it doesn't really say that you learned or understood what you did. You just happened to produce something. And I think we're missing a lot of cool people. Like the PhD student that most recently graduated in my group had no chemistry undergrad at all. And they did a chemistry project in their PhD. So they actually had a ITM, a business management degree, with not even a master's thesis. So just like I can teach anyone to cook, I can teach anyone to be a chemist as long as they have those transferable skills and the willingness to do it. But you have to understand that failure is more common than not. Yeah, a lot more common. I'm not joking. It's 90%. 90% of the things don't work.
Yeah. We know that some of our grad students got, to some extent, lucky to get a job right after they graduate, while others suffer some time to get a job. And they come to you and said, okay, I'm trying now for a few months to get a job or even to get an interview, and I couldn't. And they ask for your advice. What should I do?
Yeah, so I've been pretty lucky. There's only one student I can think of that's really struggling to move their career along. And I think ultimately it's because maybe their family kind of pushed them into an area that they had no interest in going. And so now they've committed to this route, okay? And what I tell them, and it's true, is that you just have to keep putting yourself out there. Now, she's had lots of jobs, just not success in a career. She's not happy yet in what she's trying to do. But luckily, the group has been pretty lucky so far in terms of, and I think it's because that focus on transferable skills, right? Because, and not wedded to one idea. Like if we think we're just going to do one career for the rest of our life, it's probably not right. Like, we're going to be podcast people later on. We're not even going to be academics forever.
So you never know. You never know.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think that's the important thing when you tell them is that you try to support them with the transferable skill development. But sometimes their path and their journey, I think it's mostly that I'm just listening. And it's been several years, like 6 or 7 years since they graduated, and it's just about like letting them know that you support them, you have their back. But there's not much you can do other than help them try to find out what their passion is again, right? Because they may have changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know when you work with, we call them a young generation or inspired generation, you got a very crazy ideas. When they do the research, they might come to your office and, I have this in mind. What was the craziest idea that you have heard from one of your students?
Yeah, I think the idea would be too hard to explain. It didn't work, but it was a good idea. And I'm really rooting for this person. He's actually applying for some academic positions now on the West Coast. So, but he came up so chemistry, if anybody's taken it in school, they'll remember they have to draw molecules and little rings. And it's easy to draw those things. It's hard to make them. Yeah. So I can draw up anything on paper, but to make it may not be thermodynamically possible, okay? And I think this student had a very, very impossible ambition, but you don't know until you try, and maybe it would be possible down the road, but it's it's not been published, so I don't think it was going to work. But I mean, if it's not expensive, I always let my students try. Like some things can be very expensive in the chemistry space because the starting materials are very expensive. But if it's not, like I always would much rather have them do a project that they created than one of mine because they'll be inspired to do so.